have a special guest today, Brien Convery. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Nicole. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. All right. So I am especially honored for our conversation today because you are the very first guest I've ever had. And
Awesome.
I took a minute to think about it, and we always remember our first. So I remember, my first job. I remember my first award, my first tooth. No, I didn't remember my first tooth, but that was my corny joke to start off my first podcast. Um, but which means though, this is a really big moment for me because I'll always remember having you on and this exact podcast. So thank you.
Thank you. Special.
Well, we'll see if it's special after the conversation. All right. So I wanted to start our conversation off with a cheers. So I believe you have coffee in your hand, although
I
you're
do.
drinking it stronger than me. Mine has cream, but
Okay.
I really like that cup.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's a really nice cup. Oh, I'll have to get some
Cheers.
some cheers Tupperware advice from you. Some glass advice. So cheers to the new year. Cheers for sprinkling, our energy and our purpose. But I want to make another cheers to you. So I did some research on you,
Okay.
and I think it's really important to acknowledge people that are exceptional in their own way, but people that are kind and really influence other people. So I'm going to embarrass you a little bit. What people say about you, which is really important. We work hard in our daily lives, and I don't think it's often we get to hear people, really say how great of a job you're doing. So let's do this. So Brien is an absolute GOAT, greatest of all time, which is phenomenal. I don't think I've ever had anyone say that about me. So good job there. They say you can't teach enthusiasm and passion. So luckily, Brien already has more of that than any person I've ever met. I had the privilege of being mentored by Brien during my executive residence at U of T. He exemplified the ideal mentor, accessible, insightful, and deeply invested in our growth, which is massive.
Oh, thank you.
And so I can go on and on, but I have one more that really stuck out in my opinion. I've worked directly with Brien on the national board and can attest to his commitment, his creativity, and passion for everything he does. He's an exceptional talent and will enhance any organization.
Mm, Thank
So
you.
hats off to you.
Thank you. Thank you to those that made those wonderful comments.
And thank you to you because you've made that impact for those people. And before I jumped on, I actually saw, so today's January 15th, and I didn't know this, but apparently today's like a blue day. Can
Blue
you tell me
Monday.
a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I actually stumbled upon it yesterday when I was doing some reading and realized that it's usually the third Monday of the month or however that falls, but it's January 15th and today is Blue Monday, which is known for typically the saddest day of the year that people feel either like, they've missed already on their resolutions because of the weather, I guess. Well, especially for us Canadians, if it's cold, I don't know. It's kind of cold all over North America right now, so maybe it's cold everywhere. And kind of just getting the winter blues, right? So that's what they call it, Blue Monday. So yeah, it's supposedly a real thing and something that people talk about. And I think when you talk about mental health, it's so important to talk about that and let everyone know, like, this too shall pass. Today is going to be here today, but we can make it what we can and make tomorrow even better.
I agree. And thanks so much for sharing that post on your LinkedIn. I think it's impactful for people to know that. And I think, we do set big goals for ourselves. And that's why I
Hmm.
wanted to take the time to really acknowledge,
Sure.
the influence and kindness you're spreading on other people. And that's really important. So good job. And I
Thank you.
hope anyone that will be listening can really take from adding that kindness and enthusiasm and all that great stuff can really impact a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you are not only a Canadian, but you are American from New York City.
Yes, yes.
And you probably know what question I'm going to ask you.
Okay. No.
The classic. I don't know if 100 people have already asked you this question, maybe 1,000, but I want to know the real, and I'm going to use the word juice. I want to know the real juice about the pizza. I've had the pizza and I have an opinion, but before I give you my opinion, I want to know your opinion.
Yeah, the pizza. Okay, this is an interesting one because I was talking about this recently here in Toronto that in New York, no matter what street corner you are on, there's always like a pizza place where you can just buy a slice and just keep walking and, enjoy your walk, whatever. I don't see a lot of that here, right? Like people buy whole pies for dinner or they order in a pizza for lunch for their team. But so I was really used to the pizza slices being available, as you're walking around or walk around the city, or even like you're late at night. That was another thing, after maybe being out at the bars with your friends or something, you want to have a quick bite before you head home. So I've always loved the pizza. Sometimes it's a little on the greasy side, but I think sometimes that's what napkins are
Part of
for. So,
it.
but
Right.
yeah, so but I love the pizza. I love the pizza in New York.
And I'm with you 100%. I love the pizza because it's traditional, it's classic. But my biggest surprise that nobody tells you is that you are walking down a stairs in a basement to get these pizzas. Like you can get this pizza, you're
Anywhere.
talking like, I don't know how much with inflation, but like $2, $3
Yep.
a slice for a ginormous pizza. And it's not like your classic, made in Italy pizza, but it's your authentic New York
Yeah.
pizza.
Yeah. Very true. Very true.
Okay, so a little bit. So we talked about, what the people are think about you and are saying, but I wanted to talk a little bit about you. So what I have so far, and I don't know if the list can get any bigger, but
No.
it can always get bigger because I guess we can always grow. But as far as
Perfect.
experience goes, you're very heavy in the podcast space. You have global transformational experience in multiple industries, including consumer products, technology, management consulting, federal government, human resources, banking. And what I'm really excited to talk to you about today is higher education and talent
Hmm.
acquisition.
Awesome.
So speaking of pizza, I wonder what the future of pizza is going to be. Are we going to just maybe dialing some button that's going to be flying to our house on
Yeah. On a drone.
on a drone, and yeah, and it gets dropped off, and that's
Yeah. That's probably it.
the pizza of 2025.
Maybe this year.
Yeah, it could be this year, right? Next week, everyone gets a notification, the new pizza by Nicole and Brien.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, this could be a new business idea. You think so? Do you know anyone that owns drones?
Yeah, right. No, I don't, but
Mm-mm.
I
Me
guess
neither.
Amazon, but
Yeah, I guess we can look that up after and maybe we can start our
absolutely.
own.
Pizza
Canadian.
by, yeah,
Okay, great. So to get into some questions.
sure, sure.
The biggest question, well, I have a lot of questions I'm excited to ask you about, but one of the biggest ones is I want your insights in how you foresee the nature of career paths changing with all of the advancements, and especially recently with AI. I really want to dig into opportunities you see with that, challenges.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's a great question, Nicole. I read a piece on LinkedIn. I know, some of us, I think sharing that with people is like LinkedIn is a resource, right? It's not just a place to look for jobs, but it's a place you can get content, information, get more knowledge, things like that. So I was reading this about a year and a half ago, a post that a woman out of New York actually posted and shared that, career paths are dead and it's career portfolios. And I read it and I was like, that's what it is. Because even in my own experience, I've had a lot of different experiences across industries, but I've also worked in different disciplines.
Right.
So, being a buyer in my procurement for the first 7 years of my working life, marketing, HR, talent, a lot of different things that I've done in my career. And at the time, I thought it was about building more of a general manager kind of portfolio, which it kind of was, but it actually was about that lifetime learning that you just talked about too earlier, like about learning and learning new things, right? So I think it's healthy to start to think that we're going to have not just multiple careers as we know we will in today's world, but maybe career portfolios where you actually switch it up, right? And go different directions, which could be very interesting. So I think that's really what I'm seeing as far as thinking past. When I think about other things like maybe more career paths where like a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist, like that makes sense if you're going to be staying in a field that's required. But I kind of think the portfolio idea is one that's shaping up, at least in my mindset. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I agree. And I would love it to dig into, you said that people might have more than one career. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yes, because I think, if you look at the generational, I guess, population at the work environment now, it's all it's all generations are represented. And some of us
Right.
in older generations have thought, well, I'll work for the same company for 30 years and retire. As you move down the generations, I think that's less and less of a thing. And I think more people realize that it's okay to have multiple careers and multiple opportunities. Uh, but I think it's also healthy to talk about that because I think people, may go into a situation or a job out of school and think this is the path for me, career portfolio that I'm going to try out first or explore. But maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe it's not the thing that you thought it was going to be, but maybe that's the discovery part of careering where you figure that out and move on to the next thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I was even thinking of it from a different context of, someone gave me this advice lately is when you think of your career, think of it as how can you continue to add your skill sets because technology is changing. AI is coming in really fast, kind of like the internet did. So
Yeah.
when we are trying these different career paths out, whether it's podcasting, well, that's a whole new skill set, right? Because you're learning how to do,
Yes.
communication, asking questions, listening, all these different skill sets. And then maybe your other career with your job is a little bit more challenging because you're doing coding or whatever that looks like, or recruitment.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see it from that rail light as well. Of yeah, I can kind of fulfill and gain more skill sets by having a multitude of jobs.
Absolutely. And I think the tough part about that now is, there used to be a thing when I was adulting through my career that, there was a thing called job jumpers. And, if you were not too long here or too short here, you would
Yeah.
get a label or put you in a box. And I think there is part of that going on right now, but unfortunately, sometimes people are jumping for the right reasons.
Right.
Um, right. And I don't think you should judge when you don't know why someone has decided to switch jobs or change jobs. Because also right now we know there's a lot of happening in the economy, right? And with AI that we're going to talk about here, that is sort of changing the way we do our work. So I think more open-mindedness about people
Yeah.
and not judging a book by the chapter you walk in on is really important.
I agree. I agree. And you almost have to respect people that don't stay somewhere because, they're finding and fulfilling that career path. And if they're not adding that value to that place, then good for them to move on and let someone else do it. But as that individual can advance their career, I think it's like why would you stay 2 years
It's
or
healthy.
3 years if there's no match, right? There's
It's
just not
healthy.
enough time.
It's healthy,
It's
right?
very healthy. Thanks for bringing that up. I actually don't think that's talked about enough.
No, and I happened to be talking about that this morning and how people look at that differently. And I think we do need to talk about it more. Maybe that's another podcast.
Yeah. With coffee or something else?
Uh, it depends.
Espresso.
Yeah, double.
3 shots.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. And can we dabble into the futuristic AI
Sure.
space? We're gonna have some fun. I have something
Let's do
fun
it.
for us as planned, but as far as the recruitment industry goes, and you've been on both sides, you've been part of mentoring students and really preparing them for the economy and jobs, and then you've been on the flip side where you've been part of that recruitment process. Can you talk a little bit about the future and kind of where you see things going and change happening?
Absolutely. And I think as it relates to we always look at things from like, or at least we should be looking at things from a people process technology perspective. And when
Yep.
you pull those three things together, there's always, ebb and flow between them, whether it's the people are different things are happening, all things are moving, right? Nothing stays constant. And I think when you look at AI and specifically, there's a lot of companies and tools and things out there that are starting to enhance the AI components of jobs, life, careers, medicine, everything, right? So I think the futuristic view, I mean, like I think we're on the cusp. You said it earlier, like when the internet came out, that was a big thing. And I know for young people maybe listening right now, like they know nothing because that's all they've known, right? But I have to honestly say I remember the day of faxing things, and
Yes, I do too.
I don't even want to admit that. But the point is that that AI component is here and it's advancing and it's going and it's taking off and it's already out. And so how do we look at it to maybe help us think ways that we can do things better,
Yeah.
more efficiently, and also thinking about how it can complement the human aspects, especially in recruiting of what we do, and or mentoring even for students, because the human element can't really go away. And I know there's all these stories about it going away, or companies thinking, well, if I buy this software, I won't need a recruitment team. No, and if you think that way, you don't already appreciate the recruitment team you have, because
Exactly.
it's a people business where like sales and marketing bringing in future people like clients to the organization, and we're out there on the front lines, and that's what has to be represented no matter what tools you employ. I think of the tools AI, and depending on what you do, is you look at the makeup of all those things fitting together, and each one is a data point to help you in thinking better, like, better about the candidates, hopefully, and hopefully help you as a recruiter, and as a talent person, be able to be spending more time with the people.
Exactly. And just an interesting take on what you just said, and it's the perception from the candidate as well. So
Oh boy,
if you have a company that's 100% AI and no people, well, what does that say about, your onboarding process to that company, your welcoming to the company? But if you can combine both elements where, hey, we're going to use AI in this part so we can go people human heavy in this part, then that shows, hey, the company's innovative and they're on the edge of things, but at the same time, they really care about people and making sure they're getting the right fit for the company and making, on both sides.
absolutely, absolutely. And that Canada experience, I'm glad you brought it up, is such an important component. It's like the whole component of this thing. And sometimes we just move so quickly that we really need to consider what the candidate's going through, because they may be a client, they may be a user of the systems of what you provide. Their experience matters, and so really putting an emphasis on that candidate experience and how that all comes together is so important.
I agree 100%. And how can we really, like you said, it's here. So how can we live a
Yeah,
life with it? I like to use the term tag team. So
I like
how
that.
can you tag team it so maybe you do have the opportunity to have two passions? Because no one has time. Like someone listening might say, "Hey Nick, that sounds cool. Have three jobs." But that's virtually impossible because I have commitments and I love seeing my friends and my family and things that are important to me. So maybe a positive optimistic outlook is how can we take advantage of these tools, futuristic tools, so we can really live a life where we can do it all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I've personally witnessed professors save over 20 hours from using an assignment versus using their time. So if they get another 20 hours, to your point, from recruitment on the human element,
Yep.
then how much better is that overall,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. And however you use that time. Exactly.
Yeah, which is really important. And then if you have a company that's not really interested in that future of technology too, though, what does that say to the candidate of, hey, you didn't really consider me.
Hmm.
So maybe this isn't the right fit because whatever tools you're using Need to be updated.
Maybe.
All right. So, second part of my segment of this
Sure.
podcast. And I didn't prepare you for this, so I don't know if you have this actually on your desk, but do you
That's
happen to have a paper that you might be able to rip up and like a marker or pen close by? I should have
uh
prepared you.
oh I actually don't
Okay,
because
but you
but I can
can, but we
I can
have the
play along.
messenger.
Okay,
Okay, we
fair enough.
have the messenger. So because I knew I was doing this, I have some paper.
Okay.
Old school. So I used to use a typewriter. So I have paper in my office. I'm one of those people that still take notes as well as having a computer.
Yep.
But I wanted to do two fun segments here. The first segment, so to give you some background on me, I have numerous years in banking, both in training and hiring. And I've seen a lot when I'm hiring and in the process, and I've been in the shoes of a candidate where I'm trying to get a job.
Hmm.
And I think, currently I work with students, and I think a lot of people, well, whether you're a student or anyone, doesn't have to be a student, just anyone looking for a
Sure.
job. I think a lot of the times they might be missing the mark on why they didn't get the interview, and then and not all the time, it's sometimes it's out of your control. So why they didn't get the interview and why they didn't get the job. So
Yep.
I thought it would be fun if you and I, with our expertise combined, could
Okay.
share some insights. So I'm gonna hold up one word. You're gonna put one word in the chat.
Okay.
Um, and then we'll do like three. And then what we're gonna do is I'm gonna bring up an AI avatar on the screen, and we're gonna get his opinion and see if it matches what the humans think. So this is a nice kind of demonstration of the
Okay.
human versus this AI digital human. All
Sounds
right.
great.
So the first one we're going to cover is why you didn't get the interview. What is one thing right now that you want to say of why most people don't get the interview? Okay. I have to actually write bigger. I feel under pressure for my own podcast.
That's okay.
This is like a trivia game. Okay. Did you have yours in the
You want me to
chat?
hit the chat?
All right. All right. Okay. Mine is networking. All right.
Okay.
So do you want to tell me a little bit more about yours?
Of why they didn't get the interview?
Yeah. Yeah.
And was it supposed to be one word? I'm sorry, I probably wrote too many words.
That's
Typical.
okay. And in the podcast, I might not actually saw what you wrote in the chat, so you might need to say what it is.
Okay. So the reason why they might not get the interview is because they've been screened out by a
Okay.
tool.
Fair enough. So we were just talking about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And is there anything, so it's out of their control, really, is what it comes down to. Is there anything, if they did get screened out, do you think if it was an important company they could have done after the fact to potentially get back into that pool? Or what does your expertise tell you?
Absolutely. So my experience has been that even with what I would call maybe pre-qualifying questions in any sort of ATS or any sort of applicant tool, I always encourage the team or the recruiters to take a look at who didn't make it through the screening as well, because there could be someone that maybe misread a question and answered it incorrectly, or did something that they didn't realize they were doing. Sometimes they read a question and they think it's yes, but they meant no. So
Ah,
maybe there's a way that you can look back at some of those. Now back to time, right? Time and commitment and things like that. These are supposed to help you, but at the same token, I have found in the past people that didn't clear through the pre-screening qualifications and actually were qualified.
yeah. And if they were, so let's just brainstorm together for
Sure.
anyone listening. If they were, do you think there's a way to contact that like HR department and like via LinkedIn or via tool and say, I was screened out. However, I feel like XYZ happen, is there a way you can reconsider? Do you think that, because worst case they say no again. What's your opinion about that?
I think it's up to the individual, right? If you
Yeah.
feel like you are really maybe misunderstood or however you want to word the situation, I think you're perfectly fine to reach out to a
Yeah.
recruiter or the hiring manager if it's available or find out who it is. Um, I think that's fine.
Okay, cool. Okay. So I had networking.
Okay.
Yes.
Which
And
is
this,
another big reason.
yeah, yeah. And you're really good at this side of things as far as, well, I'm hoping I don't want to ruin what you want to say next because I hope you say it. So I won't I'm just gonna stick with networking.
Okay.
But I think it is important to differentiate yourself because if you see an application, there's what 400 to 1,000 applicants per job. How can you stick out? And maybe that company is at an event or some sort of career fair, or maybe on LinkedIn they know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody you don't know. But I think when you're going into the job, if it's something you're passionate about, how can you kind of leverage that networking because you're up against a lot of people and sometimes your resume might not cut it, and or
Hmm.
like you said, maybe it's going to be some tool that weeds it out, which is completely out of your control, even though you're overqualified for that job.
Hmm.
What's your opinion on networking?
Uh, Huge advocate for it. Just like you articulated. I mean, I don't believe that any individual can just rely on an application process to get a job. It's just not the way of the world anymore. Gone are the days of what we used to call as recruiters post and pray, and gone are the days of people applying and you're done.
Yeah,
I think the networking component today, and especially in building relationships, building credibility, building your knowledge base, is all based on networking. And so I think it's a big, huge component for the candidate as well as the recruiter. If you're, just posting, hoping people apply, and then you're just picking candidates, you're doing yourself and your company a disservice. You really do need to get to know these people, get up from your computer, get to know people a little bit more. I know it's investment of time, but that's again what a recruiter should be doing as a talent uh, acquisition advisor and also as a strategic advisor, is get to know your candidates better, and that's typically through networking.
I agree. I agree. And the second thing, which you brought up, and I know we're kind of running a little bit late
That's
on time, so I want to bring up some avatars as well, but
sure.
is
That's some fun.
portfolio. I
Mm.
think that is absolutely genius and in line with what you're saying of that like differentiation piece, getting up from your desk. Do you have any tips for anyone listening on how do they start a portfolio? Maybe ways that they can, I guess, how can they start a portfolio? What's some tips?
Do you mean from the recruiter side, starting a portfolio of,
No, from the candidate side.
oh, from
Like,
the candidate side?
yeah,
Like, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, like how can they differentiate themselves through having a portfolio?
Ah, I see, I see. Yeah, absolutely. So the thing that I talk to most candidates about is, again, your resume is one data point, and it's also probably a topic for another podcast is the way we still use resumes. But the idea is that there's other things to complement. So whether it's a video interview, maybe it's a GitHub you built or a website that can can demonstrate your portfolio and what you're capable of doing. I myself created one for me because I felt it was a good way to, you know, go out there and get brianconvery.com and put out what I'm capable and what my abilities are. Because again, if you just look at the resume, you may just be looking at one of the specific things done most recently. So I think a portfolio for candidates is super important. And the way to start is really just, I think, go to like a quiet space or set up time to like think about what are your skills, your behaviors, some of the things you've demonstrated, and look at those capabilities, not necessarily from what you did, but also how you can bring that into the future. Because as we progress, we should be interviewing, looking at people for their capabilities, their potential,
Exactly.
and what they're going to be doing in the future, because the job I'm doing today is probably not going to be here tomorrow. So
Yeah.
how do you demonstrate, yes, I've done this, but not just dwell on what you've done, dwell on what you're capable of doing for the future. And as
Smart.
companies get more strategic and then talent goes along for that ride, I think, and I think it's playing out, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time because sometimes we're looking at the current now. But that's what I would think about in your portfolio. Display and share some of these things that you can be able to demonstrate, talk about at networking.
Okay, that's great advice. Thank you. All
Yeah.
right, let's bring up this avatar.
Oh
So
no.
we'll bring this avatar up. We'll see if this avatar has been on here for a while. So hopefully,
Okay. Hopefully they're ready.
yes, let's hope they're ready to go here. So I'm going to ask this avatar why he thinks people don't get the job. So let's move it. So you've done the interview piece, you've got the interview, but why didn't you get the job?
Perfect.
Let's see what he has to say. See what our digital human.
Hi there. How are you today?
I'm doing good, David. I'm here with Brien. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's great to meet you, Brien. How can I assist you today?
Well, Brien and I, Nicole, we have a quick question for you. We were wondering, in your opinion, why candidates might not get hired when they interview for a job?
That's a great question, Nicole. There can be several reasons why candidates might not get hired after an interview. It could be due to a lack of relevant experience or skills, poor cultural fit, or even a mismatch between the candidate's expectations and the company's needs. Additionally, factors such as poor communication skills, unprofessional behavior, or a negative reference check can also impact the hiring decision. It's important for companies to carefully assess candidates based on their qualifications, fit, and potential for success in the role. Does that help answer your question, Nicole?
Yeah, that it certainly does. I do have a follow-up though. How important do you think it is for a candidate to practice? Like when from your experience, do you think a lot of candidates miss the opportunity because they don't practice?
Great question, Nicole. In my experience, practicing for an interview can make a significant difference in a candidate's performance. It allows them to become more comfortable with answering common interview questions, articulate their skills and experiences effectively, and showcase their enthusiasm for the role. Practicing also helps candidates refine their responses and become more confident, which can leave a positive impression on the interviewer. So, I would definitely encourage candidates to invest time in practicing and preparing for interviews. It can greatly enhance their chances of success. Does that answer your question, Nicole?
Yeah, is there like a percentage of people that might miss the opportunity because they come to the interview unprepared?
It's difficult to give an exact percentage, Nicole, as it can vary depending on the industry, role, and individual circumstances. However, I can say that coming to an interview unprepared can significantly decrease a candidate's chances of success. Employers value candidates who have taken the time to research the company, understand the job requirements, and practice their interview skills. By doing so, candidates demonstrate their commitment and interest in the role, which can make a positive impression on the interviewer. So, it's always advisable for candidates to invest time in preparation to maximize their chances of securing the opportunity. Does that clarify things for you, Nicole?
It does, but my friend Brien here, he has a question for you.
Thank you,
Of
Nicole.
course, Brien. I'm here to help. What question do you have?
So let's say you've made it to the interview, you've completed the interview, and you you're trying to figure out, what do you do next? Do you send a thank you note? Do you follow up? When do you follow up? So what would you advise on, how you should close out, and then also thank the person you interviewed with?
Great question, Brien. After an interview, it's always a good idea to send a thank you note to the person or people you interviewed with. This gesture shows your appreciation for their time and reiterates your interest in the position. It's best to send the thank you note within 24 to 48 hours after the interview. In the note, you can express gratitude for the opportunity, highlight key points from the interview, and reaffirm your qualifications and enthusiasm for the role. Additionally, if the interviewer mentioned a specific timeline for the decision-making process, you can use that as a reference to follow up if you haven't heard back within that timeframe. Following up can demonstrate your continued interest and engagement in the position. Does that help answer your question, Brien?
It sure does. Thank you.
All right. So we got
All
to.
of
Good question. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. For anyone listening, how can, and they say, who is this Brien guy? How can they get a hold of you after this podcast?
Thank you so much, Nicole. So for anybody that wants to chat or get in touch, LinkedIn is great. I definitely do respond to LinkedIn and request there. You can also follow, if you'd like, my podcast as well, which is Coffee with Convery. We're now streaming in 22 countries, which I'm pretty proud of, which is amazing. And my podcast as well is about talent and voices for talent to have that voice and talk about their journeys from school to work to school to post-secondary to work and what is success for them. And so a lot of people sharing their careers. And this year I'm introducing a lot of different careers. So I have a NASCAR driver on it. I have different people talking about their careers. Yeah, absolutely. So because we traditionally tend to talk about the same sort of roles or things that you might hear. So I'm trying to introduce that success can come in many ways, and let's think about that. So thanks for letting me do the plug. But LinkedIn works out well, and yeah, thank you, Nicole, for having me. It's been a pleasure, and it was really awesome seeing how the avatar was able to help us and become part of that AI to support us in the questions to become smarter ourselves on some of these questions.
Yeah, and thanks for. I hope people take advantage and they check out your podcast. I certainly have, and it's a phenomenal podcast. I can't speak more of the world about you. I don't even know if that makes sense, but you get the
Thank
idea
you.
that I'm trying to say. I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm always going to remember this moment on this blue day. And yeah, thanks for playing along with the avatar. I think it's a great example to show that if we can, as humans, tag team technology and work together, we can really both add our own experiences, but also get some additional insights.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Always good to see you. And thank you for having me.
Thank you.